The thoughts, opinions, and general overall shade thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your host, Jason Beck, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us.
Oh, I bet they're the best, too.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, December 9th. Jason Beck is out this week for travel. I'm your host, Sean Salvaje. Today is Christmas Card Day, International Anti-Corruption Day, and the International Day of Commemoration and Dignity of the Victims of the Crime of Genocide, as well as Pastry Day. Guys, what do you think about all that?
That's a big day.
Today.
Yeah, I'm digging Pastry Day.
You're gonna take
That's
Pastry
one I
Day?
can get behind. Yeah.
I'm sad we're gonna Jason for Anti-Corruption and Genocide Day. The awareness.
That's why he took the day off. That's exactly right.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
It's also Lutefisk Day for my fellow Scandinavian descendants. So thank you for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look up, above, down, and below to see exactly where we live on the internet. We're live every Monday to Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, X, Instagram, Facebook, Kick, and on our very own website at www.highat9news.com. Today's top stories: top New York cannabis officials resign as a major investigation against Omnium is dropped. Virginia officials publish guidance on marijuana consumers' workplace rights, and New Mexico health officials aim to kick off medical psilocybin programs a year early. But first, we're going to hop across the pond to Europe, where the Cronos Group is set to acquire Europe's largest adult use cannabis company in a $67 million deal. So for our first story, we'll head over to the Marijuana Herald. This story comes to you from Anthony Martinelli. The Cronos Group has announced today that it has reached a definitive agreement to acquire Cannadlar BV, and help me if I'm saying it wrong. I haven't been paying that much attention to the European market. I've been focused on Texas, but this is the largest licensed producer participating in the Netherlands adult use cannabis pilot program. So the $67 million cash deal gives Cronos full ownership of a company that now supplies nearly every coffee shop operating under the White Experiment, the country's tightly regulated adult use pilot. Cronos says the purchase will establish a strong European foothold at a time when the Netherlands is testing one of the most structured adult use models in the world. The agreement includes additional contingent payments tied to Cannadlar's EBITDA performance in 2026 and 2027. Mike Gorenstein, oh shoot, we lost the story. Give me 2 seconds. Mike Gorenstein, Cronos' CEO, said the move positions the company to expand its borderless product strategy, pointing to Cannadlar's rapid growth and the Netherlands' long-standing role in shaping global cannabis culture. He noted that the White Experiment it's just a very strange name for me. The White Experiment creates a fully regulated supply chain and gives Kronos the opportunity to introduce proven product lines to a new consumer base. The Maybe it's White Experiment. I don't know. That doesn't make it better. The White Experiment, enacted in 2020, requires all 72 coffee shops across 10 participating municipalities to purchase exclusively from one of the 10 licensed producers. Importing, exporting, and sales outside of the pilot boundary are prohibited. This experimental phase formally launched in April 2025, and it is expected to run for 4 years with the option for an extension. Canadlaire has quickly become the dominant participant in the pilot, operating from a 540,000 square foot greenhouse and processing facility in Vaughan-on-Sea. The company produces roughly 20,000 kilograms of dried flower per year and sells flower, pre-rolls, hash, edibles under its COG brand. Revenue grew from $17.7 million in 2024 to $47.3 million in the 12 months ending September 30th, 2025, with the EBITDA reaching $28.2 million over that same period. The Kronos Group says this acquisition is aligned with several strategic goals, expanding its European footprint, leveraging its genetics and product development work across multiple markets, and strengthening its competitive position by inheriting the only industrial-scale greenhouse operation within the pilot program. The upfront price represents roughly 1.4 times Canadlaire's trailing revenue and 2.4 times trailing EBITDA. Too many letters, and I haven't smoked my breakfast bowl yet. Company officials are also highlighting the potential for long-term upside if the Dutch government eventually expands adult use sales beyond the 10 pilot municipalities. The Netherlands has more than 560 coffee shops nationwide, meaning the pilot covers only a fraction of the country's total consumption market. The deal has been approved by Kronos board, and it is expected to close early 2026, pending regulatory clearance in the Netherlands. What do you guys think? What's on the horizon for the European market? I'm excited about this. I mean, not the acquisition deal, but I'm excited about more expansion, bringing more.
Yeah.
I would know more about Kronos. Bringing more accessibility to the plant, but it also is kind of ridiculous that we're even having these conversations at a harmless plant. We have hemp products in coffee shops already, and nobody's had a problem.
Not for long.
Yeah, well, we'll see. What do you guys think?
I think that it's very impressive that Kronos has $67 million in cash to make this acquisition. I mean, most of these big deals done with stock, but the fact that any cannabis company has $67 million in cash, that's very impressive. As far as the market goes, I think it's great. Look, there's a demand for cannabis products worldwide, and the consumer cannot be refused. So this is all good news, only for Europe and the folks over there.
Definitely something we should be watching.
Yeah.
Thanks.
What do you, I mean, I'm curious what operators who are looking to migrate out of California, a lot of them have been eyeballing Europe. And I'm curious to see if this plan to exit Cali and hop across the pond is actually viable. I think sometimes, I don't know, who owns Kronos? Do you guys, are you guys aware?
I don't know. I think they're public, aren't they?
Is it, I would want to find out who, if it's an American who owns it, if it's a European group who owns it, because a lot of the American groups are looking at acquisition over there. And I don't think it's going to be as easy as folks think. A lot of regional markets want to protect their space. And we've seen that play out in the United States. So while I'm really excited to see what happens in Europe and Latin America, I do have some like neo-colonial concerns about everyone thinking that expanding into these new markets and breaking them open is going to be the only thing that saves them, because we saw that play out in the United States in spaces like Oklahoma, where we thought this great big wide open market was going to be a godsend for a lot of folks, but then it got flooded and it ended up being a complete train wreck.
Yeah, you're right. You know, there definitely has to be some kind of restrictions on some of the stuff, so it doesn't become a shit show like it did there. Cronus is a publicly traded company. They're on NASDAQ, and they're also in on a stock exchange. They're owned by thousands of people. You know, again, I think it's a great move. You know, anywhere legalization is being forwarded with good plans, then I'm all for it.
Any final thoughts, Liz, Mike?
Well, just wonder if it's, you know, big business getting into and taking over there, or starting to plant the seed over there to take over that.
That's exactly
industry.
what's happening. That's exactly what's happening.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, with that, we're going to have
very interesting.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to see. I think there's an argument for sure to be made about the larger organizations having the actual capital to fund expansion. But then you do have to ask at what cost, and does that mean in many places it's made them the only market participant? And I'm not sure that is going to be for the greater good long term. We've seen how that worked out with limited licensing and teacup. This is Europe, of course, so it's a different market, and they're going to have a different rule set. Looking forward to seeing expansion, but definitely want to make sure that we're protecting the plant, access to the plant, the companies that have been for legalization and decriminalization in Europe, just like in the United States. But I don't want to see the U.S. take over Europe and Latin America by just acquiring everything. Is anybody else really excited about regional flavors coming out? Like, I know we have the soil and that kind of regionality for outdoor grows, but even when you don't have soil conditions that you're looking at to create different effects for outdoor grows or different tastes, you can create those conditions in different spaces considering what you have to work with. Like we saw Colorado, not such a friendly climate for growing flower, but it forced them to come up with better distillates, better ways of producing other products, resins, etc. So am I like the only one who's still hankering for the old days where we were all really excited about what was going to be different about each region? I don't want to see McDonald's weed across the globe. I would love to see more craft.
Fortunately, that's where we are headed as an industry, right? With all of these ginormous corporations, you know, and these MSOs taking over, that's what you're going to get. Look, there's no regulation or standardization of strain names or the growth of cannabis, right? Everyone has their own, secret, double secret probation, ways to grow things. I mean, when it's really all just biology and science, right? So, because there's no standardization of, nomenclature, is a blue dream really a blue dream? Is a green crack really a green crack? I just wanted to say Alaskan Thunderfuck. I just wanted to. Is that really that, right? So there's a revamp of the nomenclature of cannabis products. And a regulatory body that confirms that your blue dream is really a blue dream. And I think that craft cannabis is a pipe dream, honestly, because if you don't treat this industry like industrial agriculture, you're going to lose.
Any final thoughts? Commercial?
I was just going to say I think that as well. Until it's federally legalized, I think those regional strains may be difficult. I remember early on in the industry, talking to people out in Humboldt and stuff, and they obviously thought their strains were going to proliferate everywhere. And I think it's more of a breeder and, the seed that you get, and then it seems like they're selling their strains, and then they're, other growers are growing them, so you're not exactly getting the same thing, not like McDonald's, where you're getting the same thing everywhere. So that's going to be a very difficult issue, but I think it's still early in the industry for those type of craft strains from certain places or growers becomes, a thing.
Yeah, there's only a few seed companies that I know of that are, I mean, with F1, who I'm familiar with most would be Royal Queen Seeds, but they're not just trying to standardize their seeds and genetics and through the F1s for commercial grow. They're doing that for home grow, so you can have a consistent home grow experience. So I hear what you're saying. It's good to see these organizations with $67 million in cash able to make these kinds of transactions, because hopefully it will help the industry when it comes to getting research, when it comes to pushing products and standardizing, stabilizing genetics. But you're right, it's going to take a minute, and it is a little bit of a pipe dream. With that, let's go into our first commercial break. If we can figure out how to do it. I might do so. All right, welcome back. We're going to get right into our next top story. This is one we had covered before, a little bit of a twist on this story from the New York Times. A top New York cannabis official has resigned as a major investigation is dropped. According to the New York Times, Governor Kathy Hochul demanded the resignation of the head of New York's Office of Cannabis Management following the withdrawal of a case against a Long Island-based company. This is brought to you by Ashley Southall, published December 8th, but it was updated this morning. So Ashley writes, New York's top cannabis official resigned on Monday at Governor Kathy Hochul's request, following the sudden withdrawal on the eve of trial of a major state enforcement case against Long Island-based marijuana company. In a statement, the governor said that she had accepted the resignation effective immediately of the official Felicia A.B. Reed, who was appointed last year to lead the Office of Cannabis Management. Ms. Reed took on the post amid the rocky rollout of the state's ambitious plans for the building of legal market cannabis. But according to the governor, state regulators continue to stumble under Mrs. Reed, Miss Reed. They continue to stumble under Ms. Reed. Ms. Hochul cited the dropping of the case against the Long Island-based firm Omnium Health. Too often, the Office of Cannabis Management has stood in the way of the market realizing its potential, including most recently in the case of a pending compliance action that it has had to withdraw, Ms. Hochul said in her statement. The Office of Cannabis Management withdrew charges against Omnium earlier on Monday, less than a day before an administrative trial at the agency was set to start. Officials lifted an accompanying order recalling products made at the company's facilities for some of the country's leading brands. And James Rogers, a former prosecutor who led the investigation into Omnium, was also fired, according to 3 people aware of his departure who requested anonymity to discuss the personnel move. Omnium, so that means someone from the inside is releasing this information. Omnium did not respond to a request for comment. Officials did not publicly disclose a reason for the withdrawal of the case, the timing of the action, or whether the governor had ordered it. State regulators had accused Omnium of illegally allowing out-of-state companies like Stizzy, Gron, and Infuse to make their own products under its license. We had talked about this before as some kind of reverse-inverse licensing scheme. Officials had sought to revoke Omnium's licenses, ban the company from the state, and force the owners to pay millions of dollars in fines. The case ensnared some of the most recognizable cannabis brands in the country, and it was the biggest test of the agency's authority to crack down on bad behavior in the legal market. The companies all denied wrongdoing. Companies declined to comment, noting that the hearing was still set to go forward on Tuesday, that's this morning, at the heading of the administrative judge. At the heading, the administrative judge could dismiss the case or take other action. In an email to Omnium obtained by the New York Times, Kevin Brown, a lawyer for the state agency, said officials were reviewing the information linked to the case that had just come to their attention. He did not elaborate. Taylor Randy Lee, a spokeswoman for the agency, added that the case was withdrawn without prejudice, meaning it could be refiled in the future. We're going to want to get Mike's opinion on this. Ms. Reed, 40, did not answer a phone call or text message. Ms. Hochul, that Ms. Reed is the outbound regulator. Ms. Hochul appointed her to lead the cannabis agency in June 2024, following a controversial audit that blamed the agency's founding leaders for a troubled start. Susan Filburn, the agency's chief administrative officer, will now lead the agency on an interim basis, according to an email she sent to the agency's governing board. The Empire State Green Standard Alliance, a consumer advocacy group, had praised regulators for taking action against Omnium. On Monday, the group called for clarity after the case was withdrawn and Ms. Reed resigned. Quote, New York's cannabis consumers deserve stability, transparency, and consistent enforcement, said Herb Barbot, the group's chairman and the cannabis agency's operations director. He called on the state to conduct a thorough search for Ms. Reed's replacement, adding that it needed to be someone with industry experience and credibility. Mr. Rogers, 61, declined to comment. He led the agency's Trade Practices Bureau, which opened to great fanfare in February with a mission to root out corruption among licensed businesses. Omnium was one of the unit's first targets. And Mr. Rogers had vigorously defended the case, even as the companies swept up in it threatened to sue, which they have not yet done. When New York legalized recreational cannabis in 2021, lawmakers sought to create a level playing field for small local businesses to compete with deep-pocketed companies that had a head start in other states, while uplifting people who were harmed by the state's past enforcement against marijuana. But critics say that rampant, unchecked cheating undermines those efforts and squeezed out honest operators who didn't have the resources to compete. The cannabis agency had focused its limited resources on setting up the market and shutting down unlicensed operators before officials created the Bureau to address misconduct among licensed businesses. This, when I read 2021 in the article, it dawns on me, it's been about 4 or 5 years now. And when it happened in 2021, I remember when we first got the word and everyone was so hopeful and optimistic, and this has just been a complete shit show. So it's just endemic at this stage of what happens when you try to make legal a plant that should have probably never been made illegal. This is kind of the mechanisms of prohibition that always seem to fail through prohibition and then into regulation. So I am really interested. I would love to get behind the scenes and get Mike in on this. There was the conversation about reverse licensing. I'm wondering, we're aware that they were likely doing this. So what is probably the fine print language that their lawyers were able to demonstrate shows that this is actually something that is lawful and able to be done? And then the question will be, how can other people use that strategy in two ways? Because yes, I hear you on the licensed operators who are having a hard time competing, but we also got those licensed operators on the ground on the principle that no one should be locked up for a plant. So unless these people are actually poisoning consumers, I still have questions about how we're planning to run enforcement on all of this. Mike, I want to bring it back to the group, bring it back to Mike, especially, who's a lawyer. What are your guys' thoughts?
I would say off the cuff, it's kind of interesting as the timing as to when they drop it and the fact that it's dropped. And you wonder if, there was some more shady dealing and things that they didn't want to be disclosed through that process that would have made them otherwise potentially look bad, either how they handled it, how she handled it, or just the overall structure and how the system was created in general. So I really kind of wonder those things. The article says a lot, but I think, because those things didn't seemingly go public or have hearings on it, there seems to be a lot of things that were left swept under the rug regarding this. And who knows? I'm sure that they knew this stuff was going on, and they were licensing these issues and kind of looking the other way at that point.
Yeah, so you're saying that it might not be that, and this is all speculation. What you're saying is that it might not actually be that Omnium has a solid case in its defense, but more that the way that the OCM put together their case to pursue charges could have been so deeply flawed that it would have been embarrassing to the agency to actually pursue it because everything would have been thrown out.
Yeah, I mean, it seems weird after so much time and investigation that this would be the end result of it. No seemingly consolation agreement, no anything. Just we're tossing it out and that's it. So it does seem like there's probably something more to it that's not being provided in these articles or records that we have.
And dismiss without prejudice, Mike, can you spin us, the audience and everyone here, up on what does it mean when you have a case dismissed without prejudice?
So it technically means that the party can refile it if needed to. So they're not, as long as the statute of limitations isn't over, but they could refile the case against the other party, if it was dismissed for some sort of procedural requirements or for whatever reason. But when it's dismissed with prejudice, that usually means the court or the agency made there's no way to fix the complaint. There's the agency made a factual determination, or they were afraid of a factual determination being made against them, so they agreed that they would not refile the case. So this could be refiled, but it doesn't seem likely.
Seems as if New York, just from the jump, has not been able to do anything right as far as cannabis is concerned. It all started, as the article mentioned, with the non-enforcement of the bad players. All these bodegas opened up and started selling weed as soon as they passed laws, and they couldn't shut them down.
Yeah.
Just doesn't make any sense, but that's what happened. And now all of a sudden, you got guys playing by the rules, and it makes it more difficult for that to happen. I think they need to purge the entire cannabis system that they've created in New York and just start over again.
It makes me wonder, why is all of this structure, coming? Why is it necessary at all? I feel really like Jekyll and Hyde sometimes. There's a level of disassociation. Look, especially because we have hemp states, so we have these, and I advocate for those, and we have these hemp states where everyone is able to participate. And not many of those spaces, yes, there are bad products on the shelf, but I think that would open you up to consumer lawsuit if your labels are inaccurate or you're selling bad products that are actually harmful for consumers. But the whole limited licensing concept as being a way to achieve freedom from the mistakes that we made through prohibition makes no sense to me, because it's just another prohibition structure.
That's right. That's right.
And now we see, like, Oklahoma went crazy, but I think what we really need to do is the states have to stop looking at this as a dispo only model, because you had in Oklahoma a ton of operators who more dispensaries than you knew what to do with, and then the people actually needed. But if you just had the products, if producers were able to put products in normalized retail shelves, like your grocery stores, yes, your convenience stores and other locations, and you just did a simple age gate ID check, you wouldn't have any of the problems that we have right now, and you would have collected licensing fees from all of those bodegas, from more stores than what you have currently. And by the way, you have the same amount of weed on the streets in New York, whether you know it, like it, or want to acknowledge it or not. The volume hasn't changed.
But the problem is you're going to have more people going crazy and losing their mind because the cannabis is so much stronger today. So I think we really have to put our citizens, who are potentially at risk under this totally insane, strong regime in order to make sure people are safe, because that's the only thing that's important to our government officials.
How to save the kids.
Yeah, gotta save the kids by blowing the whole thing up. Gotta love it. Well, with that, let's go into. Oh, did you have one more final thought?
I was just going to say, and especially in New York, when from early 90s, I mean, you could just call a guy on a bike and he'd deliver top shelf cannabis flower right to your place. So,
yeah, they did a whole HBO series on it. Like, how are you gonna try to get the guy off the roads? Like, the guy lives even on HBO. That had multiple seasons. That show. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Do you guys know what I'm talking
about? But I did live the experience.
There's a show on you guys will love this. There's a show on HBO.
I haven't watched it. I saw information about it.
It's like if your old plug from years ago, as if he got his own HBO series. It made you feel like the guy. But the fact that we have an HBO series about that specific culture, you're the plug on the bike, and that is a real thing in New York. Why did New York, it just shows that the level of disconnect between policymakers and regulators and the actual people, because culturally
the real world.
Yeah, there's nothing that they're going to shift culturally. All they're doing is making a bigger mess for themselves. And apparently now inverse licensing might be, let's find out. I definitely want to see whatever papers we can get from this case to see exactly how we're getting away with this one. Just because
there was a lot of backdoor stuff that had to go on. It just, nothing is a coincidence.
Allegedly.
Everything was very perfectly timed.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
I believe that. And I think, Michael, will you agree with me?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, with that, let's go. Let's give the mic over to Michael Minardi, Esquire. Michael Minardi is an attorney from the great state of Florida, representing cannabis businesses, patients, and others who get wrapped up by Johnny Law. He's been helping the cannabis community for over 20 years. At his firm, Minardi Law, is none other than Michael Minardi.
And the crowd goes wild.
Good morning. Good morning to everyone on the West Coast, and happy high noon on the East Coast. Today, of course, it's Psychedelic Tuesday. This is an article from Health out of New Mexico, source NM. New Mexico health officials aim to kick off medical psilocybin program a year early. New Mexico's Department of Health experts on Friday announced an expedited timeline for the state's new medical psilocybin program during the program's first advisory board meeting. The 7 members of the newly formed Medical Psilocybin Advisory Board met virtually with DOH experts, State Jeff Steinborn, the Democrat from Las Cruces, and dozens of members of the public to discuss the status of the program and draft the program's operational procedures. The program was created during the regular session earlier this year through the passage of Senate Bill 219, co-sponsored by Steinborn. The bill established the program and advisory board, as well as made the use of psilocybin legal in the state in controlled, qualified medical treatment settings. New Mexico is the 3rd state in the country to allow psilocybin or magic mushrooms for therapeutic use. We are experiencing a new renaissance of psychedelic medicine, Steinman said during the board meeting. He added that other states will be watching and learning from how New Mexico's program is established. By definition, we're pioneers, and we're going to learn a lot, but I also want to challenge you to not be afraid to try new things, to innovate, to make things better than they've been in other states in some cases. According to the bill, patients will qualify for the psilocybin program and treatment if they are diagnosed with major treatment-resistant depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, substance abuse disorders, end-of-life care, and other conditions approved by the department. The bill also states that the program must be implemented no later than December 31st, 2027. Dominic Zerla, director of the Center for Medical Cannabis and Psilocybin, said during the meeting that the DOH has set the goal of opening the program to the public a year early. The department also hired a program manager and are working to fill the roles of environmental scientist and compliance officer. Because there has been such a large interest and push for us to try to be able to help keep people with psilocybin treatments earlier, we have set a goal now to have the program at least be able to see the initial patients by the end of December 2026. During public comment, attendees voiced support and excitement for the program's creation. Others said they were curious about the possibility of trying the treatment when it becomes available, how the supply chain will work with local mushroom growers, and how licensing will work for medical providers. Denali Wilson, director of strategic support for nonprofit Healing Advocacy Fund, said her organization is ready to provide input to the DOH as the program takes shape. She said its priorities are safety, a clear code of ethics, systems for measuring outcomes, and patient affordability. While it is important for the program to move forward with urgency, achieving the right balance of safety, affordability, and equity will require careful attention and thoughtfulness, Wilson said. Let's be sure that any acceleration of the regulatory timeline doesn't unintentionally compromise patient safety, undermine long-term stability, or limit meaningful public engagement. Meanwhile, we'll leave people on the antipsychotics provided by the pharmaceutical companies to make sure that they continue to have suicidal thoughts. Great to see another state moving towards psilocybin and psychedelics for treatment for mental health and overall mental health in all people. I don't think it should be just included to people who have depression or anxiety, as we all face stresses of the daily grind. What you guys think about another state coming on board?
I love it, but it still blows my mind how fast this went through. It was like you blinked and everything was passed, but yet us marijuana people are like, what the hell? I mean, I think it's great. I think it's a long time coming. And I think it's going to help a lot of people. And I know, or I've heard that, you know, big pharmas are already starting to create their own psilocybin. And, you know, that's another reason I think it went through so fast. And we're left in the dust. So, I don't
think Big Pharma is going to succeed unless they get the psilocybin from actual mushrooms or from mycelium. There's so much involved in fungus that similar to cannabis, there's so many things and so many molecules inside this plant that we haven't even found yet, much less are testing for now. And it's the reason why Big Pharma hasn't glommed onto the cannabis space is because they can't duplicate cannabinoids. So they can't make synthetic cannabinoids. And I think psilocybin is going to be the same thing. They will. I think they're going to revert to those other psychosis pills that don't work and keep everybody, a regular customer.
Yeah, that's my concern. I felt the same way that you did, Liz, about the Ibogaine initiative. Even though I want to see the good in it, there is something deep down in me that is very much like mistrusting this because it's too easy. And I don't think that they're really into things that are truly going to help people, because we've seen veterans testify over and over and over again about how different substances help them. Why now this year is it different? Probably because somebody's got their plan, or they think they have a plan to capture this and give it over to pharma. And I am a little bit worried about the psychedelics community. Like, this is a good story. It is good that the state is making progress. But I do worry, and with psilocybin there's a lot of questions, because that's one where I'm not sure we should have that in the gas station, as much as I'm.
Oh God, no.
Right? Because for some people you don't ever know how your dose is actually going to go. You can take a small, what you think is going to be a micro dose, and have a complete psychological experience. And then you can take a heroic dose and be sitting there like, I don't really know nothing is going on here. So you don't know what is going to come at you. We have to be so careful. Some of these Amanita chocolates that are out there, I don't like. I really don't like, especially because I'm Mexican American. Psilocybin is from Mexico. Maria Sabina, we all know the story and the history of how it came to be and how in the 60s, the scientists got their hands on psilocybin mushrooms, right? And they took it from Mexico. It's an indigenous plant. This is much like peyote. So you have these plants, and a lot of the material, this is exactly like the story that we just had in New York. The material that we're using to decriminalize and legalize these substances are stories about healing. They're stories often from veterans. They're stories from community members and the grassroots. And there is something about going through that process that is really important to whatever psychological benefits we're seeing with psilocybin. I've worked with a ketamine clinic. I've worked with a legal psilocybin retreat space in Jamaica, and they're really set, Michael Meditations, big shout out. They are set on creating a gold standard, but they have therapists on staff. They are looking at the numbers and the quality. They grow their own mushrooms, and it is not done by turning the plant medicines into pharmaceuticals is not the solution. If pharmaceuticals were the only viable solution for human beings, then we wouldn't have the issues that we do. Like it's giving very Brave New World for me, and the way that we're starting to look at this and how quickly they're moving, especially because we see so many of the people who are moving really quickly on this tend to be more conservative Republicans who have often been on the prohibitionist side. So there are a few different flags that raise. Am I happy about more expansion? And are they saying that it should be under medical supervision? Yes. And on that same note, I don't want it to be so exclusive to medical supervision that the people, the practitioners, the grassroots folks who actually have been good stewards and shepherds for this plant and protected it all these years while you were trying to eradicate it, I don't want them erased. They need to be able to participate, and we need to keep people safe without creating this open psilocybin market where cult leaders are going to start dosing people. And I wouldn't say sounds conspiracy theory, but y'all come on out to Austin, Texas. I guarantee you will find a cult leader who is dosing someone on psilocybin. And it's concerning a little bit. Like, we got to be careful about this shit.
So should there be absolutely. Of certification that you acquire based on training similar to a mini medical degree, or should we leave it to doctors? I mean, you're saying that you want the shamans to be able to administer because they're the ones who've been doing it, right? How do we know that the shaman isn't a cult leader? How do we know? How do you cross off that not a cult leader box? When certifying folks.
So I think obviously for Native American practice, stay out of tribal sovereignty. Let the tribes do their thing. But as far as everything else, I think it's like much like doctors, although, a lot of folks are skeptical now. I'm not skeptical of all doctors, but the Hippocratic Oath, I do think that there needs to be some kind of program and training, because we have had instances of people dosing folks on psychedelics and committing sexual assault, like committing fraud. We need to be very careful with this. At the same time, just like the problem, and this is how it has parallels to New York, is we used that argument about the legacy operator, the traditional market, and what grew New York cannabis, and how it was time to end that war on drugs. And then now the licensed operators are upset that traditional operators are going to be traditional operators. You know what I mean? So we have to find a way to do both, but I don't think chaining everything up the way our government traditionally has through prohibition or gross overregulation or abusive capitalistic practices. Like, I am all about capitalism, but you also need to reinvest in your people. just being a capitalist to take it all and run. And what you going to do when you die? Like, what are you going to do with it? You know, that isn't the way for
You're
this.
a capitalist socialist.
I would be a democratic, I think they call those things. But yeah, I'm about the money, but I'm a mom. I would believe in investing in my kids' future as much as I believe in investing in the country's future. And I'm worried that the people who are doing this are not. They are really invested in their next 10 to 20 years because they are also on the way out. The folks who have the capital like this.
They're invested in themselves. That's what they're invested in.
Oh.
But it is, Mike, it is a good story that New Mexico is looking at expanding access to psilocybin. Let's just see how it plays out. Fair? Is that fair enough?
Yeah, and just how everything goes, there's going to be a transitional period, and when these things, even like cannabis, how it's still, after so long being medical in many states and legal in many states, it still has all the taboos. So I think, just like everything, it's going to be rolled out. People who know how to use it are going to use it anyway, just like they have been for cannabis forever. And that, as we continue to push these things forward, the more research, more science comes out, the more data that we have available to kind of end these stereotypes, further educate people so they know how to properly use these products and to do so in a safe space. I think those are all the ultimate conclusions of it, when realistically adults should be able to use anything that they want, and the government should just be making sure those products are safe for us to use.
Amen. And with that, we will go to our next commercial break.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to entertain you while we wait to go to our next commercial break.
Oh man, your knees still bothering you, man?
Yeah, my left one, And I'll tell you what, I've been using this new CBD cream, and it works like a miracle.
CBDs? I done heard about them CBDs. I was out there on them Twitters the other day, and I heard they get you high as a kite.
Well, not this stuff. This stuff is tested. Every batch, all the way through, pharmaceutical grade, and in a GMP certified facility. So you're not going to have to worry about flying high.
GMP certified? I might have to try some of this out. Where do I even find this?
You go directly to aimhighhemp.com and they will ship it to your door right away. Tested. It's not a name, it's a promise.
Stop whatever you're doing. Make sure you smash that like button. I know we'll appreciate it. You'll appreciate it, and YouTube will appreciate it. Also, make sure you just subscribe to the channel. If you're not subscribed already, and all the articles that we cover on today's show, you can read directly on our website at www.highat9news.com. And again, please make sure, in the event that we are shadow banned one more time, hopefully not, please make sure that you're following us on X and Rumble. If you can't find us here on YouTube, that is where you'll definitely be able to find us.
The control tower from Highly Educated has perfected the dab. Utilizing the concept of thin film evaporation, you can waste none of it and taste all of it. The micro texture of the SE pillar increases nucleation at elevated temperatures. And with the tower propelling at 2,600 RPMs, it's certainly the most efficient dab experience to date. The control tower from Highly Educated.
All right, welcome back. Our next story comes to us from Todd Denkin. Todd has been a C-level executive in the cannabis and hemp industry since 2009. He has successfully launched 2 publicly traded cannabis companies. In 2009, Photron Holdings, and in 2014, Digipath Labs, the #1 cannabis testing lab in Nevada. Todd now hosts becoming the king of pot on YouTube and other streaming platforms. Todd?
Thank you very much, Sean. I want to say that you're way, way cuter than Jason. So if you want to get a full-time gig doing this, by all means.
You guys are
way easier on the eyes than his mug. Anyway, hi everybody. Welcome to High at 9 and happy high noon over there on the East Coast, where I'm from. And the story comes from the East Coast as Virginia officials publish guidance on marijuana consumers' workplace rights. That's right, as Virginia lawmakers prepare to resume efforts to legalize adult use marijuana sales in next year's legislative session, state officials have released guidance. A recently enacted law that provides employment protections for workers who use cannabis while off duty. Virginia has a medical cannabis program, and recreational use and personal cultivation were legalized in 2021, but there is not currently a system of regulated sales for recreational use. Legislators have already taken steps to enact further reforms to allow marijuana sales from licensed retailers. The Legislative Commission putting forward a framework last week in hopes of advancing the issue in 2026. The Department of Labor and Industry published a new document outlining workplace protections for cannabis consumers. Guidance states that employers, quote, should not take employment actions, including discipline or termination of employment, against an employee based upon the presence of cannabinoid metabolites in the individual's bodily fluids, an employer-required or requested drug test, without additional factors indicating impairment, unless the employer has established a drug-free workplace based on its reasonable workplace drug policy, unquote. Medical cannabis patients, specifically, guidance from DOLI's Virginia Occupational Safety and Health Program, stipulates that no employers may, quote, discharge, discipline, or discriminate against an employee for such employee's lawful use of cannabis oil under the laws of the Commonwealth pursuant to a valid written certification issued by a practitioner for the treatment or to eliminate the symptoms of the employee's diagnosed condition or disease, unquote. There are exceptions built into the rule, which is being implemented in response to the enactment of bills signed into law in recent sessions. Impairment during work hours would not be protected. Employers could not be required to do anything that would cause them to be, quote, in violation of federal law, or that would result in the loss of a federal contract or federal funding, unquote. Additionally, defense industrial-based sector employees could still take adverse action against workers who test positive for THC, quote, in excess of 50 nanograms per milliliter for a urine test or 10 picograms per milligram for a hair test. So everyone knows a picogram is 1/trillionth of a gram. If you have 1/trillionth of a gram in your hair follicles and you're busted, then you're busted. Guidance document also says that nothing in the rule, quote, shall prohibit an employer from adopting reasonable, zero tolerance, or drug-free workplace policies or employment policies concerning drug testing, smoking, consumption, storage, or use of cannabis in the workplace or while on call, provided that the policy is applied in a non-discriminatory manner, unquote. The DOLI guidance notably included a definition of cannabinoids that says compounds in marijuana that, quote, may help treat the symptoms of cancer or the side effects of cancer treatment, unquote. The most recent bill that Governor Glenn Youngkin signed on cannabis and employment policy enacted last year was meant to codify that public sector. Workers were also protected from adverse actions by employers along with private business employees, unless they fail or unless they fall into a category where there's an explicit exception. Several years before lawmakers passed and the governor signed cannabis consumer workplace protection legislation, inadvertently was left out of a section of state code covering firefighters, maintenance workers, teachers, and other public employees. Meanwhile, after months of hearings and debate, legislature's Joint Commission to oversee the transition of Commonwealth into a cannabis retail market released a framework for an adult use marijuana program at its final meeting on Tuesday. Since legalizing cannabis possession and home cultivation in 2021, Virginia lawmakers have worked to establish a commercial marijuana market, only to have those efforts consistently stalled under Youngkin, who twice vetoed measures to enact it and were sent to his desk by the legislature. Once the legislative session begins in January, a new proposal is expected to be sponsored by Delegate Paul Kryzak, Democrat, who has served as chair of the commission, as well as Senators Louise Lucas and Aaron Rouse, also two Democrats. House said last month he's very optimistic about the prospect of advancing legislation to create an adult use marijuana market in the coming session. That optimism is heightened by the fact that the state Democrats widened their House majority and voters finally elected a pro-legalization governor in November. The measures that we can take to find revenue, I'm very optimistic about the approach. The senator, who has been the lead sponsor of legislation to lead and regulate adult sales, was vetoed by the governor, also added. We in Virginia have to take every step to make sure we can find revenues, strengthen our communities, strengthens the education process, puts food on the table, and that gets people back to work, Rouse said. I'm Todd Denkin with High at 9 News, and finally, Virginia moving in the right direction now that that idiot Glenn Youngkin is removed from office. So I'm really happy for my pals over there in Virginia, and I'm happy that Youngkin is going to move on to greener pastures, not restrict the will of the voters.
I think it's great. I hope they don't screw it up. With with different convoluted a trillionth. What was it? A trillionth of an eighth?
Trillionth of a gram.
A gram.
Trillionth of a gram found in a hair test.
But that was for defense contractors, though, right?
Oh, that was, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, they can't go to concerts, going to concerts, right? Hanging out with people who smoke weed.
Yeah, I want Liz to finish, share what she thinks, but I have thoughts on that specifically.
Yep.
Yeah, I think if the government doesn't overthink this, maybe it'll be a wonderful thing. But when they start adding, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and now, all of a sudden we've got lawsuits because of this, and now we have these regulations for a plant, and I'm hopeful it will go well. I'm hopeful it will go exactly as planned.
The best part about it is that they have personal cultivation, which is really a great step in legalization in any state.
Oh God, yeah.
I'm really excited.
We're fighting for home grow here in Jersey. It's insane that we can't. It's a huge thing.
Dispensaries want the monopoly. I'm in the guy on the bike, the plug on the bike.
Yeah.
What's crazy is it wouldn't actually. I don't think it would have a significant effect on their bottom line. I think if more
not at all
behind home grow, I know someone was upset about me shouting out RQS. My apologies. I have never had anything bad from RQS, and it's always been a good relationship. There's also Blimburn, but I'm sure you're going to freak out about that one too. Either way, the thing is, when you support home grow, those companies, you can automatically appreciate a lot more because you know that they're supporting something that would seem to be against their best interests because it's actually for the principle and not solely for the profit. And you can have both of them. Protecting, including home grow, is huge. It's ridiculous not to have access. And then on the defense contractor side, can I be very frank? We all know the vets were smoking weed in Vietnam and since, even in the conflict zones. In fact, even I, when I deployed to Afghanistan, was invited to sit down and smoke hash. I'm pretty sure I'm one of the only people to like be puking off the side of the road in Afghanistan after smoking too much hash, but maybe not. But the thing is, if I could have stayed and smoked, I would have retired out after 20, depending on whoever was in administration, what insanity we were doing. But I feel like you don't see folks going real rogue and committing war crimes or doing insane things high on weed. They're more sitting around asking, why are we doing the things that we're doing? Like, what is the deal with this? You know?
That's why the government doesn't like it.
That's the problem, exactly.
The authority. That's right.
So,
right.
Yeah, I get why they want to. Obviously, you don't want to have a mishap, you know, on a flight line with someone who is stoned and they fuck something up because maybe they can't manage their cannabinoids like others. But I am curious.
Go ahead and drink up, Johnny.
And I'm curious how they're gonna how are they gonna deal with this because I know for me, you can test me at any point. I'm gonna test positive because I consume for medical purposes. So this is daily routine use. Even if I went on a tolerance break for a while, I'm pretty sure the fat would metabolize THC for some time.
Yep.
So it's
like 6 months.
Proving the impairment is my big question on any of this. And then on the same side, why are we put the warning labels on SSRIs, on MAOIs, and on other pharmaceuticals where we say, hey, don't operate heavy machinery, don't do this stuff, like know how you're going to respond, start slow and know yourself, know how you respond to your medication, take it with food. Like we provide all of these precautions. Why can't we do that with cannabis and then just let go? Because the more we try to figure out how to constrain it, the more convoluted it becomes and the less control they actually realize that they have over it. If that was the case, the hemp market would have never happened, you know?
Mm-hmm. I don't, so I think as far as the home grow goes, I think the majority of people that are wanting the home grow are the medical patients. They are the medical patients that need a certain strain. For example, people with epilepsy. Some of them use a grapefruit type strain that works really well. Yet you can't find it anywhere. So that's, I think it's more medical patients that are legitimately wanting home grow. And I think what's going to happen is if home grow passes, all the legacy people are going to be medical patients. I foresee that happening.
Yeah, I don't think that should be a problem though. Like you should be able, and I think that would do a lot more good for genetics than I think folks growing at home would do us a lot of good. We need that kind of biodiversity. I really think of like tulip blight, and we have these hops latent viruses that are taking out genetic lines. If we had more biodiversity and allowed more, there's genetics I'm sure that we haven't found yet that if we allowed more home grow, we would have more of that. But I'm just one of those old school hippies. Any final thoughts, Mike, Todd?
Yeah, I just have a couple
Mike,
on
you're
it.
muted. There you go.
I just have a couple on it,
Are you muted?
I should be unmuted now. A couple comments in running a regulated adult.
I can't hear you.
Oh no.
We're fine.
I
And then
can
you
hear
muted
myself.
yourself.
No, I unmuted myself. I have no mute on mine. Can you hear me now or no? Yeah.
Yes.
Sean can. So, on my research and running a legalization campaign, which included home cultivation, it was seemingly the evidence showed that only 3% of the population actually cultivates. So it's not even a huge percentage that's going to be busting into the dispensaries, bottom lines. Number two, when you have, like in California, you set up a system wherein the dispensaries can sell clones, can sell seeds, can sell products for the cultivators. They're now just putting new SKUs on their line. So I don't think that I think the whole fallacy of cannabis cultivation limiting or significantly reducing the bottom line for dispensaries is totally untrue and misguided. And I think majority of people will be burning and destroying clones more than they'll be growing them out and still end up at the dispensary. Then dispensaries have that wide variety. On the employment issue, and something near and dear to my heart because I do represent clients in this issue, and we currently have it up on appeal with the Second District Court of Appeal, whether or not employees should have rights to be able to use medical marijuana off-site. And I think that is 100% something that's reliable. In his situation, he's a paramedic firefighter, and they're like, oh, we're worried about people becoming impaired at work. Typically when you know someone and you're working with someone every day, especially in one of these positions, you're a firefighter or you're a law enforcement officer, your job when you get to a scene is to determine, are these people impaired? Right. So there's no way to say that these people shouldn't be able to use substances, and the people that work with them are going to be able to show that they're impaired because that's what they do as a job. This is the continued canna bias against the people who want to get up and go to work. And the judge in that case in the trial level was, well, what about if he was on Xanax? He said we'd wake up in the morning on Xanax and he'd be foggy for the first couple hours of work. You don't have a problem with that? And the attorney was like, I don't know. I don't know what the policy is on that. But 99% of employment policies that I've seen, and I've read a lot of them over the past few years, say an illegal narcotic or under the influence at work, and they do not delineate something like cannabis, and a lot of them are still considering it illegal because it's federally illegal. So we need these state protections in order to prevent them from making those arguments that it's federally illegal, so I can't allow it. And the whole situation with federal funding and things of that nature, I wonder if these companies are going to try to stand behind that. There was a case out of Arizona that said that, listen, not one agency or organization has had the threat of their federal funding being withdrawn because they were allowing people on their campus to use medical marijuana. So I think that is a potential escape that they're going to try to use, but hopefully the courts will see, listen, there's no potential of you losing federal funding because it's never happened before, whether or not you're a hospital, a law enforcement agency, or a school or a college. It doesn't have an impact on that. So those are all the things that I worry about. Employment rights and employment protections are needed for cannabis employees throughout this country right now. It's a huge issue that we have here in the state of Florida. So nice to see that they're at least talking about it there.
Yeah, Nevada even took cannabis testing off of the drug testing for employers. So that's what has to happen. I mean, if it's legal in your state, the employer cannot have any control over what I do once I leave those four walls, right? I mean, it's just silly. Just silliness.
Yep. Mm. Well, and the crazy thing is because the testing, they don't differentiate between hemp and medical marijuana. You could be using 100% federally legal hemp products, and they're still getting the same test result. So yeah, it's bullshit.
And Sean, like you were saying earlier, look, for anybody who smokes pot, more than once a month, it's in your system. It's there. It lives and breathes inside your endocannabinoid system, and you're right. It's stored in the fat cells, in your body, hair. And also in your hair, right? So, a 1/1,000,000th of a gram detected in your hair, and you lose your job. It's just stupid. And Michael, like you said, it's okay if somebody takes a Xanax or an opiate or some other painkiller or other whatever taking, like alcohol, right? Mm-hmm. Like, even alcohol, a couple of drinks at lunch, that's okay. Nobody's testing for that. Yeah, it's a weird hypocrisy that
It's so strange because I came to cannabis because I was having symptoms mimicking stroke, and it had to do with autoimmune inflammation and some neurological issues and neuropathy. And they had prescribed for me topiramate, but topiramate was causing me to slur my word, like the intoxication I felt taking topiramate versus the level-headedness I feel with cannabis. Honestly, I would have been a better sergeant I would have been better in the military had I been daily dosed and medicated, because I would have been a lot less tightly wound. It would have been a lot easier to move projects across the finish line, because the level of stress, and it's not just me, there's a lot of folks who are having that experience. We're still having a lot of issues, even with that recent veteran who committed suicide. There are a lot of pressures that I think veterans internalize, especially, and that pressure to perform, that pressure to be a part of a bigger mission, the pressure to be contributing to something much bigger than yourself. And then, so you have that when you're in service, and that's a lot. And then you also have to remember you are in the uniform, you represent the nation. So don't be a dumbass. And then on the end of that, when you're as a veteran, you are coming back from who knows what. And hopefully you've been honest with your service and maintained your integrity. And I am specifically talking about follow those lawful orders and don't follow those unlawful ones, because it's those unlawful ones that'll really keep you up at night. I know people think that folks can do these things with no sense of conscience, but that isn't the case. It's always under there. And if we could give people, but let's talk about the folks who are doing the right thing and then trying to reintegrate back into society, and we're denying them access to this plant and instead prescribing them things that make them feel 22 different medications. Like, I'm sure you guys have seen those documentaries. Veterans are on 22 different stacks of antipsychotic medications, and it makes you more sick. And there's no reason to deny the right to try. I understand has to do with end of life or terminal illnesses, but I do think there should be a right to try for the right to live, not just the right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've never heard
Quality.
a veteran say, "Hey, those 25 pills that I take every day, they're really working." Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've never heard one, not one. And I've
That's how
heard
you get to 20.
hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of veterans say, "Wow, I smoke one joint and it just levels my whole brain out." Because I've interviewed a bunch. I used to do a lot of work with Weed for Warriors. And, we talk to these folks and get their stories, because it's important to do that. Like I said, not one of them has said, "Oh, wow, my 12-pill cocktail is awesome. I'm feeling great." Not one.
Yeah, no. And how do you get to 20? How do you get to stack like that? Because they're not working, because you're going in presenting other symptoms that are likely related to the
side effect. Now treat the side effect. Okay, this helps that. Now it creates this, and so on and so on.
I go through that now because I have an autoimmune disorder and I'm on long-term prednisone. And so, it does perfect on my autoimmune. And while prednisone is a wonder drug, which it is, now I've got, I have to take medicine for elevated blood sugar because that's a side effect. Then I have to take, I take a lot of pills, but, it's the one that I need. And a few of them are to treat the side effects of the one that I need. At one point, I had a medication that was treating a side effect of the main drug. So I had a side effect. I had a pill to take a side effect. It was crazy.
And then let's not talk about off-label uses. Let's not even get into so many of these prescriptions are actually off
down the wormhole.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God, yeah.
Well, with that, we are going to go to
Cannabis
our next.
is my medicine.
Yes, exactly. We'll go to our next commercial and then we'll come back for our last story and a story from Liz.
I just ordered the summertime strawberry salad when added steak on top here at Anna's. Make sure you do the same thing too next time you're in downtown Long Beach. Come on down and check out Anna's joint on the 400 block of Pine Street. They have amazing selection of beers, foods, and when you come down here to Anna's, you can even challenge me to a game of shuffleboard if you want to lose. Did you get that? So, next time you're in downtown Long Beach on Pine Avenue, make sure you stop by Anna's Joint on the 400 block. Not only do they have Anna's Joint, this restaurant and bar, but they also have the amazing deli next door, and then next door to that they have a very exotic flower shop. You may want to stop by and say hi.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining us at High at 9 News. Our next story comes from Liz. Liz is an advocate in this space, and she is a senior cannabis advocate who became passionate when she found herself in a very overwhelming cannabis industry with no help or education. Now, as a senior super stoner, she's lighting up the way by bringing education to seniors and bringing senior awareness to the cannabis industry. I happen to think seniors are going to be a huge demographic in the future, so I love this. As the fastest and biggest growing demographic in the industry, and apparently so does Liz, she is the new target audience. Liz, take it away.
Thank you. Hi, team. Over on the West Coast, and hi team over on the right coast, left coast. Today's article is coming from MJ Biz Daily, and I love good articles. This is my happy place. By Margaret Jackson. Are consumption lounges the next frontier for legal cannabis? Okay, God, I hope so. All right, so cannabis consumption lounges are redefining hospitality with a buzz-worthy twist. From yoga sessions with edibles to paint and puff nights, dedicated consumption spaces are the next chapter for the cannabis industry, according to Dale Sky Jones, Chancellor of Oakland, California-based cannabis education institution, Oaksterdam University. Lounges are the most exciting frontier for the cannabis industry, said Jones. He led a roundtable on consumption lounges at MJ BizCon last week in Vegas. A successful lounge act will master compliance, safety, and customer education to craft an experience as elevated as the patrons themselves. That can in turn build brand loyalty and unlock new revenue streams. I have so much to say about this. Crafting the experience where cannabis meets hospitality. The foundation of a successful consumption lounge begins with the experience. It delivers. Jones stressed the need for a thoughtful design, seamless operations, and specialized staff training to ensure spaces are not only compliant with local regulations, but also provide a memorable and enjoyable experience for patrons. From air filtration systems to soundproofing for music venues, every detail plays a role in shaping the customer journey. Hospitality is about reducing friction and creating a flow that feels natural, Jones says. Whether it's the layout of a buffet or educating customers about dosing and onset times, every element contributes to the overall experience. Staff training is crucial, especially recognizing signs of overconsumption and managing cannabis-naive customers. Most people don't know their tolerance, and that's where education and safety come in, Jones said. Bars have alcohol management techniques, and we need that for cannabis. We need staff to handle these situations, provide spaces for patrons to rest and hydrate, and ensure everyone has a positive experience. Cannabis consumption lounge opportunities and challenges. Consumption lounges offer opportunities for businesses willing to innovate. There are comedy nights, music venues, dual-use spaces. The possibilities are endless. Tribal governments in particular have a unique advantage as they can craft models that integrate cannabis into existing recreational environments like casinos and resorts. New Woo Cannabis in downtown Las Vegas provided an ideal example, but the challenges are significant. Compliance remains a major hurdle, with the state and local regulations often treating cannabis differently than alcohol. Cannabis businesses are more exposed to legal and insurance risks than establishments that serve alcohol, Jones said. I disagree with that, but that's just my opinion. We have to be our own advocates, Jones said, urging operators to prioritize safety and compliance while pushing fairer regulations. Insurance has not caught up. Public education is another critical area because cannabis is not well understood as alcohol, Jones said. We need to educate not just the consumers, but also the city councils, the state governments, and regulators to ensure these models are allowed and supported. The future of cannabis industry, Jones sees consumption lounges as a way to elevate cannabis brands and new business models. The brands that succeed will be the ones that focus on lifestyle experiences, she said. You can't take cannabis across state lines, but you can take the experience. She also envisions a future where cannabis is seamlessly integrated into everyday activities from senior care to dog parks. People love to bring their dogs to the park and enjoy a yoga class. Why not add cannabis to those experiences in a safe and responsible way? As the industry continues to evolve, Jones urged operators to balance advocacy with responsibility to educate customers and their community. By leading with education, safety, and innovation, we can show the world that cannabis is a safer, healthier choice. This is our choice to redefine what hospitality means. Let's do it right. I am a big believer in consumption lounges here in Jersey. I think we are now, and it's just they're lounges. They're not like walking into a bar and sitting at a bar or a hardwood table. There's couches. There's individual seating and sections, and I get the feeling that it'll do a lot for a community. I think somebody will be in a consumption lounge and look up and see so and so and her husband whose kids in their class and they didn't know, and now all of a sudden they got new friends and they're hanging out, and stoners are much happier people than a lot of drunks. So again, you're not going to start fights. You're going to make relationships. In New Jersey, though, you cannot cook or sell food in the lounges, but they can DoorDash. That's allowed. So I think this is something that if it works out, where it's allowed, it's going to be huge. And I think government needs to just step back and watch. Hold my joint. That's what I could do. Your thoughts?
I love this. I love it. I am always happy when I hear about new consumption lounges opening in states with marijuana regulations, and then also a little bit sad because I realize this is why it's so important to identify that hemp and marijuana are both cannabis. They're just different regulatory structures. And so we have had these, we have Cozy Cannabis here in Austin, and it's handcrafted gorgeous, has the HVAC system, everything, really beautiful space. And it's become a cornerstone, exactly what you said, a cornerstone for the community. So a place for local artists, a place for moms. The Canna moms love it, especially they even have like clothing, they have fashion. And I'm not talking about just cannabis merchandise. I'm talking about like high fashion, like clothes you would actually wear, except, oh, it's a silk, dress with the cannabis leaf. And it's just beautiful. And I really want, it's so ridiculous to me that the states that have, led the charge on this for so much time are still so far behind. Having spaces like we have these consumption lounges where you can consume and you can have a coffee. We have like Amsterdam style coffee shops. And there's more of that, I think, in places like Texas, Kentucky, and Tennessee than we have in places like now we have California coming online with spaces, but before they didn't have those spaces, New Jersey's still struggling. It's just been kind of blown my mind watching this from 2020, the development from 2020 post-COVID on. I would have expected to be a bit faster. I'm really looking forward to them getting over these hurdles because it would be nice to have cannabis or hemp, whatever we're going to call it, cannabis available.
Weed.
Right. Available. Like if you've ever tried cooking with it, even if you're not using anything with a high THC potency, even if you're not infusing for intoxication, there's a level, like you can cook with it and it's an herb. There's a whole nother flavor profile. Use a little bit because it's very pungent, but it's a whole nother thing where you can use the leaves. And there are so many applications and industries that the cannabis plant can help or expand. It's
But
really
that's
sad. Go ahead.
That's part of the problem. That's part of the problem is it's so versatile.
Mm.
These big businesses, the concrete makers, the house builders, they don't, These big businesses do not want, hemp taking over or cannabis or weed because it's going to mess up their industry.
It's just too bad because it's just like the home grow isn't going to hurt dispensaries and larger operators. Adding one more option isn't going to hurt these industries if they can learn how to pivot with that evolution. Products, materials, industries, things are going to change over time anyway. Can you pivot with that? That's going to be your best way to profitability, not always continuing to, like, there is a certain ceiling to continuing to limit the people and their access to the plant, money, healthcare, all of it. There's only so far you can get for a very limited amount of people unless you reframe how you look at making money and developing a nation. But that's too much for one afternoon news program. So, Mike, do you have any final thoughts before we dip into our last story of the day?
I absolutely love consumption lounges. I think they are needed everywhere. And, in Florida, they use it as an excuse because everywhere will smell like pot in the state. But if they had consumption lounges, we wouldn't have to worry about that.
100% agree. Well, on that note, we are going to go into our last story for the day. It's from the Marijuana Herald. It may be a little bit triggering. We'll see. But if we had all those consumption lounges, however, would regulators know how to monitor our intoxication levels? Cannabis Technologies may have a solution. Let's see. From Anthony Martinelli at the Marijuana Herald, marijuana breath test device clears key U.S. and Canadian regulatory hurdle. Cannabis Technology says its handheld marijuana breath test system has moved a step closer to market, announcing that its breath collection unit has officially passed electronic emissions testing required for devices sold in both the U.S. and Canada. The approval issued under FCC Part 15 rules in the U.S. and ICES 003 standards in Canada confirms the unit meets federal limits on radio frequency emissions. The company received an accredited test report verifying compliance, marking what it called major milestone as it works to commercialize the technology. The breath collection unit, paired with Cannabis's proprietary single-use breath cartridge, forms the core of a system designed to collect stable breath samples for lab confirmation of recent marijuana use. How recent? The company says, and how does that affect impairment? Still, more questions. The company says engineering refinements over recent months focused heavily on meeting these regulatory expectations ahead of planned market entry. Testing was performed at QAI Laboratories in British Columbia, an accredited facility recognized by regulators in both countries for electrical safety certification. Cannabis notes that passing emissions testing is one of the foundational requirements before the device can be marketed or sold in North America. The marijuana breath test system is built to support forensic level analysis using liquid chromatography mass spectrometry. Cannabis is developing the platform in partnership with Omega Laboratories, a longtime drug testing provider with federal and international certifications. The two companies are working together to bring the breath-based THC detection system to customers in the US and Canada. Cannabis, which also develops alcohol breath testing technologies, which we all know are really so certain, stable, and reliable, says its marijuana breath platform is intended for workplaces, law enforcement agencies, and other settings where identifying recent THC use is relevant. Mike, I can't wait to hear what you have on this one.
I just think it's got to go through the testing. We've heard about these types of products before, and none of them seem to actually hold water when it gets down to it. But this is the complaint in state after state as to why we can't legalize it, because we can't tell whether or not someone's impaired while they're driving. So, and then the question is, do these things, are they even going to show whether or not someone's impaired? As you were talking about before, you know, how long you've used cannabis, potentially it's going to stay in your system for 6 months after you stop using, you know. So as they've had with nanogram limits on blood tests and stuff, had the inability to be able to determine what is and what is not you know, a legal amount in someone's system, or what does and does not cause impairment for one person is totally different from the other. So I think that this will have a whole bunch of challenges and problems as it rolled out and it gets actually implemented in society.
Liz?
I think too, there are a lot of variables. You know, did you smoke it? Did you eat it? How long ago did you eat it? I think there are too many variables to be able to create a standardized limit. You know, if you're dabbing, if you're, you know, using it topically, you know, there are so many factors to take in, and time is a huge one. You know, did you smoke 20 minutes ago? Did you smoke 40 minutes ago? It's just too much. You know,
yeah, or did you eat it? I think is kind of funny, because that would be, then you have detection of presence and no intoxication at all, because just consuming, if it's not an edible and it's not decarboxylated and you're just consuming THCA, would that be an issue? Because there are plenty of patients who consume non-intoxicating cannabinoids.
Mm-hmm. And people's tolerance is different, you know, especially with edibles, where, you know, somebody can, you know, only handle maybe a 5 milligram gummy, and then you have somebody else who doesn't get touched under 75 milligrams.
Yeah, I would agree. We'll see if this is going to be able to stick. But for now, that brings us to the top of the show. So thank you all for getting high with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. PST and high noon on the East Coast. Big shout out to our audience and supporters for tuning in daily and listening to the insanity that is the developing cannabis industry. Huge shout out to our correspondents and to Catalyst for helping to keep the lights on here at High at 9. Thank you to the correspondents for being absolutely amazing. And thank you to Cannabis Sativa L for giving us a reason to do this every day. Thank you to Cloud Media Partners, Elias and Gabriel somewhere in the metaverse. And thank you all for tuning in and getting high with us at High at 9 this morning. We are America's #1 daily cannabis news show.